Howdy, and welcome to Fanfic Frustrations. So you know how Red Dead Redemption 1 and 2 are directly related? Well, it got me thinking about the Red Dead world at large, and how I want to just know more about this universe. So I thought we could find that universe by reading some Red Dead fanfiction and making up some new headcanon, because we all love fanfiction. Title: Musings of a Dying Fossil, The Death and Legacy of Edgar Ross. In more than 6 decades as a historian, I have noticed a great shift in how discipline is conducted. Many of my colleagues, and myself included, pay far too much attention to constructed data, to military equipment, to machinery, and the search for a hidden fact or truth that somehow justifies their political or economical ideology. What is lost throughout this entire process are the stories. We all have our own stories, as do the dead, and mine is coming to an end. I am 96 years old, was recently diagnosed with terminal cancer, and feel my body getting weaker every day. Perhaps I have a month left to live, 2 if I'm lucky. I am quite certain that this will be my last ever publication. Coming to terms with my own mortality, my 3 children, John III, Abby, and Arthur, have been instrumental in this, has given me an opportunity to notice that I, in essence, am a living relic of history. I remember the excitement when the city of Blackwater first installed its streetlights, and the proclamation that days would now last forever. A notion that seems silly to the contemporary cosmopolitan and supposedly enlightened metropolis of 11 million. I remember when St. Denis smelled of soot and excrement, the air being as toxic to the lungs as tobacco. I remember traveling for days on horseback from town to town, notoriously perilous journeys that would now take 15 minutes driving on the interstate, but I choose to take the train to work. Some of my earliest memories involve my childhood with the infamous Vanderlyn gang, who I've written about extensively, and the mad dash to safety after the Blackwater Massacre of 1899. It is important to note from an objectively historical perspective that much of this advancement would not have been possible without the efforts and influences of Edgar Ross. His destruction of the Vanderlyns over a period of years is a known and frankly overdone subject of analysis. When I wrote Red Dead back in 1946, I sought to tell the stories of the gang at its peak, not of its downfall. The stories of my father, the gruff but gold-hearted Arthur Morgan, the whimsical but courageous uncle, the maniacal Micah Bell, and the infamous Black Widow are known far and wide now, a fact of which I am quite proud of. But it was Edgar Ross who ended those stories. I have long been a private critic of Ross, but I have restrained from criticizing him publicly due to his revered status in my areas of academia. I am now 96, dying, and no longer care. I could write a series of books on my criticisms of Ross, but, as I no longer have time or strength, consider this essay the drastically abbreviated version. The great German philosopher Immanuel Kant cautions us that it is wrong to use people as a means to an end, rather than an end in of themselves. For those who may have not dabbled in ethics and or philosophy in general, it is wrong if you use people for your own purposes. It is also wrong to murder them. Unfortunately, I do not think Edgar Ross accomplished anything in his life without using people. He used myself, an innocent boy, and my mother as bait for my father, and then used my father as a tool to drag out and exterminate the desired remnants of the Vanderlyn gang. Once Ross was done with my father, he killed him. My colleagues argue that Ross was the catalyst for Western modernity, and that we'd all be riding horses and towing away on farms if it weren't for him. As someone who has rode horses and towed the land for his entire life, I'm not sure what the problem is. And perhaps this is true to a certain extent. As I stated previously, the influence of Ross is undeniable, but the praise of progress as an intrinsic good concerns me, because as historians, it is imperative that we analyze at what the cost good came. In the case of Ross, the cost was blood and innocent lives. In many cases, the Pinkertons were as bad or worse than the outlaws they hunted. They murdered, hunted, stole, and raped. They destroyed innocent lives and communities without care, largely as the result of a personal vendetta. The outlaw town of Van Horn, for instance, was violently occupied by Agent Andrew Milton in 1899, until his subsequent assassination. Historians are not supposed to have opinions about criminal cases, merely report the information and interpret their wider impact upon society. But the fact the assassination of Edgar Ross in 1914 is considered to be one of the greatest cold cases in history amuses me to no end. Criminologists, psychologists, forensic analysts, biologists, and both the American and Mexican governments have relentlessly hunted for a killer, but found nothing besides a dead old man beside a river in Mexico, a brother who had possibly had information but was too shocked to reveal it, and a widow who had married a younger lover within a month. This is a special case, though, as it is the historian who has the definitive answer, as you need not look beyond Ross's most famous quote, that everyone eventually pays for what they've done. For years Ross hunted, harassed, and abused myself and my loved ones. He killed my father and would have left his body to rot had I not buried him at our ranch like he would have wanted. I suppose this essay will be interpreted as a confession after I'm gone, but I don't think it amounts to one. Regardless, I killed Edgar Ross. I shot him in a duel on the Mexican side of the St. Louis River. I did it for my father, and I am still as angry now as I was 77 years ago. The authority of the state does not diminish the immortality of Edgar Ross. To me, the word confession implies some level of guilt or remorse. By confessing, one expects some form of forgiveness or leniency. I feel neither guilt nor remorse, and I ask for neither forgiveness nor leniency. If I had 1,000 opportunities, I would kill Edgar Ross 1,000 times. At this point in my life, there are only 3 things I wish for: that my loved ones continue to find happiness and prosperity, and I think that they will, that I have made my father, wherever he is, proud, and that Edgar Ross is treated with the necessary historical accuracy to convey who he was. I suppose I may be considered the last outlaw after my death, but I beg you to consider if any action of Edgar Ross was more just than mine. If there's one thing I've learned about history as a study over the course of my long career, it's that Edgar Ross had the right idea about one thing: everyone eventually pays for what they've done. So this was written by That Texas Kid, and I actually like the idea of it a lot, that Jack has a journal. It's clearly inspired by Red Dead 2's journal, that I feel like there are journals for every character out there in the fan fiction world now. But this one's kind of fun since it's like old man Jack, so it's kind of like his final form, for real, because he's about to die. Anyway, that was just the first chapter of 6, I believe. So if that sounded interesting to you, there's plenty more to go read. Let's just keep this in our head and pretend it's all real, and that this is now part of the Red Dead world. I think we have time to do one more story, so let's look at some spicy fan fiction real quick. Title: Arthur Morgan, ex John Marston. Jealous. Seeing as Abigail was still John's wife, Arthur had no reason to get jealous, but he did. He loved the man to bits and didn't want anyone else. John couldn't have anyone else. From that day forward, Arthur had been antagonizing John, and he only did it when John's wife was around. Finally, starting to catch on, John let it go on for a few days and purposely put the two together to see if his theory was true. And well, that's how he got to where he is now. "So, John, planning anything tonight?" Arthur asked, blocking his wife from view, so he casually went along with it. "Well, I was planning on going to the bar with Abigail and a few," he replied, seeing the jealousy practically radiating off Arthur. "Oh, I actually have some things to do, hun," Abigail replied, quickly walking back to Jack. Arthur let out a sigh of relief, then grabbing John's arm, dragging him away. "Why do you always avoid me when Abigail's around?" Arthur Whisper yelled angrily. "Why do you always get jealous when she's around?" John Whisper yelled back. Arthur immediately looked down. I didn't realize I was," Arthur replied sadly. John sighed and pulled him into a hug. "Look, Arth, I'm sorry you felt that way. I plan to tell her soon," John says, rubbing Arthur's back gently. "You better. I don't like feeling that way anymore," John chuckled, placing a quick kiss on Arthur's forehead. "It's okay, Arth. How about we go save some more folks by the hotel again?" John suggested. Arthur nodded into John's chest. So that was an excerpt from Arthur Morgan x John Marston by Dulcid, titled Jealous. And it's a trip. This whole story is just about Arthur and John being lovers and hiding it from Abigail. There's 28 parts. I'm not going to read all 28. If you want to, go for it. One thing I love about things like this are you see characters that you know so well acting completely and totally out of character. Like, could you imagine this guy softly nodding his head into John Marston's chest? Anyway, that's enough fan fiction for one day. If you like this video, go and do all that stuff you're supposed to do. And I'll see you in the next rodeo. That way it'll be our second and not our first.